You are now listening to the Select Gaming Podcast.
Dusty, you are not one of those people who tends to buy a lot of digital games. I know this about you. And neither am I. Now, if you wanted to have access to any of the Nintendo Wii U and 3DS titles, well, again, we're out of luck because the digital versions of those are no longer available for purchase because Nintendo has shut down their eShop.
You mentioned that people were upset about this.
Yeah, so I think the issue is that there's no people are upset because there, in a lot of cases, if you want to buy some of these games or some of this DLC, you're stuck in the land of shelf collectors, our best friends in this universe, the shelf collectors. So a lot of games, for instance, that were available on eShop for a reasonable amount of money, you could buy physical, but you'd have to spend a hell of a lot of money, which is not even to mention all of the other Wii U and 3DS games and downloadable content and add-ons and so on that aren't available physically, and you don't have the opportunity. Basically, a lot of video game history on those platforms was effectively snapped out of existence by Nintendo.
I guess the thing is, I don't understand why people are so shocked by this reoccurring behavior that these companies are doing. I mean, Sony did this a little while ago, or they threatened with it, like with the PS Vita stuff. Like something happened with that, right?
Yeah, they threatened to close down the PS3 and PS Vita stores because they didn't want to maintain the servers anymore.
It's money.
Of course, it is.
It's a money thing. I guess the thing with Nintendo is, first off, I know no one who owned a Wii U. I think the Wii U is now becoming this new sort of like hot commodity thing where people just woke up one morning and they're just like, remember the Wii U? And they're looking for like the top 20 games because I feel like the prices on these games for the Wii U are starting to go up, and there was a couple decent things for the Wii U. It's just nobody bought it.
Absolutely.
So there are these decent experiences that are waiting to be played, and I think the digital store seemed like it was the only place to have these experiences because no one bought a Wii U. And now that it's gone, it's even more disappointing, but it's like, I'm not surprised by this though.
No, I'm not surprised by it either. I think the prevailing opinion here is that people are upset that their options are being taken away from being able to play these games. To which I would counter, no, they're not. Just the options where you have to pay money for them have been taken away because has been and will always be ways to play these games so long as there's anyone interested in video game preservation through piracy. It's probably the only way long term that we're going to be able to access these titles. Think of it another way, right? If you wanted to play the virtual console games that were available on the Wii U, so the old NES and Super Nintendo games and GBA games and so on, Nintendo is more than happy for you to, number one, buy those games again, or number two, to access those games through its like online paid monthly subscription. I think where I'm a little incredulous about the mourning of the death of the eShop for the Wii U and for the 3DS is that I don't really quite understand why people are so surprised that this has happened and are shocked that Nintendo, doesn't have their best interest at heart. Like, why would you be shocked? In the same way that I wasn't shocked when Sony wanted to shut down the PS3 store. In fact, I'm more surprised that Sony kept the store up for an additional year or however long it's been.
I think that was just a circumstance of backlash, just to like be like, listen, we'll give you another year, then for real this time. We're closing it down. People who are shocked about this are people that have probably never experienced this prior. And oddly enough, the PS3 store closing down is kind of where I got burnt the most in this sort of like this digital store services, right? Because I can't transfer my DuckTales over to my PS4.
Oh, right.
DuckTales, I was thinking about this a few days ago because this is what I think about late at night. I was like, my DuckTales is forever going to live on my PS3 as of right now because Capcom, they haven't said anything about making it available on the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 5. And it makes me upset because that game can easily be played on those systems because it's technology that the PS4 and PS5 can handle, right? That even I would even say that the Switch could handle. So why aren't you guys putting it up? I'm sure it's only like 3 gigabytes. What's the problem, right? But I guess for the Wii U and the 3DS, I don't know if it's because it's so specific to the hardware that it was played on that maybe there's like it's like a maintenance thing or something. Does it have to do with anything like that or no?
I would be very shocked by that. I mean, it's like, look at it this way. I think there's about 5 titles, like Metacritic 80 plus titles that haven't been ported from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. I think one of them is like one of the Xenosaga games. I could be wrong about that. And I think a Yoshi game hasn't been ported over. A lot of the excuse is going to be like rights based. Simultaneously on a separate path, Microsoft had taken down one of the Forza games off of Game Pass and off of it, and is no longer available for sale. It's speculated there that it's a question of licensing, but also recently they took down the Remedy game Quantum Break. And that seems weird. It doesn't have the car licenses and the song licenses that you'd expect. I mean, maybe there's some sort of, that game famously or infamously or typically for Remedy has in live action scenes, they filmed a television episode and it was inside there. So maybe they lost some likeness rights. But this is the hellscape of the online store future, right? I mean, look, there's there is a sense in which you don't own even the disc that when you buy a disc, it's a license. If you read the end user license agreement, it's like you own the rights to play this game for such and such a period of time until the servers run out and so on and so on. But you don't actually own the game. And indeed, a lot of the times what's on the disc is irrelevant because they'll patch it out on day one. Nevertheless, there is a sense of security that we all sort of cling to through those discs. And I think that there's good reason for it. I mean, we know this as film collectors, that if you want to access a film, nowadays there's only one of 2 ways of doing it, by and large, especially if it's escaped the sort of really leaky mesh that is like Netflix and Disney Plus and all these servers, which is either A, you spend $50 if you're, on a boutique Blu-ray or 4K UHD release from Vinegar Syndrome or Criterion Collection or such distributor, or you pirate it. And you say preservation will happen in a distributed way. Like we'll all have a copy of 1995's cult classic Showgirls on our hard drives in order to preserve it, right? So I think that the death of the e-store and the death of the PlayStation Store is only relevant to people who see video game preservation as a service that is run by companies. But there's a lot of different services from Xbox Live to PS3 servers to Unreal servers that are being preserved by the community. I think the only difference is that now we slowly started cotton on to the idea that actually we need to do it ourselves because the companies aren't going to do it for us if we want to keep this stuff safe.
This is just another example, though, of kind of the danger of the digital store. It's not just with video games. I mean, a lot of people have gotten burnt on iTunes. I've lost a couple albums that I've had to either download again or I've had to just find a zip online somewhere. Dude, this is why, at the end of the day, I hate to say this, but piracy is king, because you are forcing people to hunt down the things that they love, and these companies sort of have not found the right business model with these digital stores. This whole concept of the digital store, it's still fairly young. The last time it worked perfectly was Napster, because it was like a community. It was free, and it was just run by people that loved music. There was all love on a platform like that. These digital stores run by these companies, there's no love. It's them just kind of course, trying to stay afloat to survive. And I understand that. But, you said something about like the Criterion Collection and the Vinegar films and all that stuff. Maybe the future of video game preservation is something where it's like, if Nintendo doesn't have the capacity to keep these Wii U games and 3DS games, maybe the future of video game preservation and where people can sort of play these games is that these companies start to outsource them to third-party facilities.
I think that there are certain video game third-party distributors that certainly imagine themselves to be in the same role as Criterion or Vinegar Syndrome or Second Run.
I Am 8-Bit.
Like I Am 8-Bit, like Limited Run, dude.
Yeah.
I guess my issue is that I don't see, and we've already had a conversation about Limited Run, and it's that neither of us are particular fans for a whole host of reasons. But Limited Run, I don't think that the video game industry is capable of doing it in the same way that the film industry is capable of doing it. For one, the video game industry is far more centralized than the film industry is. There's no nationalized markets for video game industries, in the sense that like you're unlikely to discover, a Czech 1970s or, well, we'll be generous, 1990s DOS video game or 486 video game that was so hot in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia at the time and no longer, right? But then at the same time, it's like, and it's not to say that the video game, that the distributors and the preservationists in the film community are like angels to whom we should then genuflect and cross ourselves because they are only doing this to preserve film history and they are not, they have no other ulterior motives. But on the other hand, to give you a recent example, there's a new distributor came out this past year called Radiance Films, right? A guy used to work at Arrow Video, now works for Radiance Films. He'll sell limited edition copies, which come with a booklet and a little additional thing on the cover. Then afterwards, he just sells regular editions. And yes, they don't have the sort of like slip covers or any of the sort of other fancy materials, but he'll sell it. Indicator is another company, right? They'll sell it. They'll sell a limited edition for the people who want to keep it, the shelf collectors. And then if you just want the movie, they'll sell a cheaper version of that. Limited Run does not do that. I Am 8-Bit does not do that.
They can't, because the most of the rights to these things are owned by Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft. They sort of get the indie dev stuff, or like the rare, on a rare occasion, like a very retro thing that people are jonesing over, and people buy it. Right. I
do just feel that like there's a sense of scarcity that the video game, these sort of like micro publishers like Limited Run push. And it's not just them, because you'll recall like the Nintendo Wii was like deeply, and it was operated very much on a sort of scarcity model. It was impossible to come by. But it just doesn't seem like the film, like despite video games and films as being close artistic cousins, the film industry doesn't do it in the same way. It just doesn't. And I think that I have more faith in the film community to preserve its own heritage than the video game industry is. And that's also partly because the film industries had to do this for a much longer period of time. They have a history of lost reels and lost films, and they know what sort of like the loss of that cultural artifact is. Whereas what have video games lost really? We've lost like, some Flash games? Yeah.
Some shovelware.
And we haven't even lost the ability to buy stuff off the eShop. I mean, if you've seen Wolfden made a recent video where he's talked about like, yeah, you can download this thing off of the eShop, off the, from the quote unquote nefarious websites, and then off you go. Like, this history is not gone. It's just gone from official sources. But if official sources aren't sort of willing to be stewards of it and make it publicly available, then forget them. than piracy it is. I mean, of course, you do have another option, which is you can do what the completionist did and spend $22,000 on buying every piece of DLC and game off the Wii U and 3DS eShop.
So that is a total PR weirdo thing, because that's not normal. Because $25,000 on Wii U games is maybe there's only like $100 worth of games that I would buy personally. But the thing is, you can just emulate these if you really care about these games. You could have done them before. You most certainly are going to be able to do them in like a year, because this only gives birth to a wave of just more underground stuff, right?
Totally.
Like,
totally.
When I hear about this stuff, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But you know what? You know what's going to happen. You know that the nerds are they're going to band together, right? And they're going to solve this. And they're going to just fix it. And they're going to have this housed somewhere. So I guess truth be told, when I hear about these things, I'm like, because I know that the people that care about these things, they're going to take care of them. And the people that want them, they'll find a way to get these games. So rest assured, I mean, it sucks that, these companies can keep these things alive. They choose not to, but rest assured, I think that the gaming community will find a way to fix this. And who the hell knows? Maybe there'll be like some weirdo, maybe like Retrobit does something for like a Wii U controller for like, I don't know. Like something weird where it'll sort of get a second life in the emulation community, these Wii U games.
I think we're not that far away from it. I mean, the Wii U controller is no different, like fundamentally, than an Android phone with two sort of controllers stuck on either side, right?
Yeah.
So look, the thing is that we're so quick to mourn these moments. Well, not us, because I think we're both clear-eyed about the fact that this is not actually that big of a deal. The decisions made around closing digital shops is because they've done the calculation that it is no longer worth their time and effort and their money to maintain this. And frankly, I don't know whether or not the Video Game History Foundation, who received the sort of $22,000 collection of stacked SD cards and hard drives, are in any better of a position. Listen, don't trust institutions, trust people, right? Like, be ruthless to them, and collectively someone will have this stuff on their hard drive, and it'll never escape so long as we preserve this stuff intentionally.
Thank you for tuning into the Select Gaming Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. We create videos for the Select Gaming that are guided by our personal interests, and your support makes that possible.